Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your rentable hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. Today we bring the pain and the joy in equal measure. First, John will return to his old ball and chain, Rent a Girlfriend, and talk about in what ways its newest season is bringing him ever closer to a rage-induced brain aneurysm. And after that, I will turn the page on a true classic by reviewing the newest adaptation of the Anne Shirley book series. So get ready to dive into a world of childlike wonder and imagination. Don't forget to pay your rent on time or you will end up truly maidenless. And definitely don't pause the pod. We'll be right back.
I don't know where to start with Rent a Girlfriend Season 4.
Once upon a time, there was a man who ventured into the dangerous world of anime rom-coms. Not knowing what he was getting into, he decided to start watching a little show called Rent a Girlfriend because it sounded fun and intriguing. Little did he know that he would end up torturing himself to no end. Is that how it started off? How it went until now?
That's the real life story. So I had issues with season 1 and 2, but I felt like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Pretty sure I talked at length about season 3 a couple of times now, and I thought it ended on a really strong, really heartfelt note. And then season 4 throws that all out the window.
Because there was actual character development in season 3, and season 4 was like, we can't have that because then we don't have the drama anymore, so we need to backpedal on the character development, or what happened here?
Yes, a lot of that. So Kazuya's family takes this like biannual vacation to this resort called the Hawaiians, which I believe they said is in Okinawa. So about as far south as you can get in Japan. I believe that's where they said it was. My notes are very sparse because I was just getting so frustrated with this. I'm sorry.
Aloha.
Yes. So Kazuya's grandmother, Nagomi, is so taken with Chizuru and is so fixed on the idea of her marrying her grandson that at one point in an earlier season, she gives her this ring to hold on to that was hers and was Kazuya's mother. And it's like, okay, I get that you like the girl and you want the best for your grandson and all that, but don't you think that's a little heavy-handed? And
she's from a different generation. I feel like maybe she deemed that appropriate or something. I don't know.
I mean, I guess when they go on this vacation, I'm skipping a lot of the preamble in the first few episodes because it's largely unimportant. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hemming and hawing and what's her name? Oh God, the ex-girlfriend, Mommy coming in.
The one you hate.
Like, the one everyone should hate. Mommy coming in and trying to convince Chizuru that Kazuya is just using you. If you just kick him to the curb now, you can just leave this all behind you. And Chizuru's not stupid, okay?
Thank God, because that is not naturally the case in, some of these shows.
Number one, Chizuru's not stupid. Number two, Kazuya isn't not manipulative. He's an idiot, yeah, but he's not some manipulative prick. Mm-hmm. He clearly, he can't get the words out of his mouth, but it's clear he wants the best for Chizuru. And I look at that and I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? At least you're not trying to be disgusting about this. You're being a little weird about some things, but you're not outwardly gross. Okay. And then Ruka plays into all of this where she's like, but I still want to be your girlfriend, Kazuya. And Kazuya's like, listen, kid, quite literally, kid, because you're still in high school, kid, I'm into Chizuru, and I've said this to your face. So they go on this vacation. And guess what? Everyone is here. Nagomi invites a lot of other people without Kazuya and Chizuru's prior knowledge. Guess who shows up but Mommy, and she wants to throw a wrench in all of this. And Chizuru is so bewildered by all of this because Kazuya and her agreed on like a signal prior to the set. If someone forced the two of them into a situation that they wanted to be, that they didn't want to get into, that Kazuya was like, do you feel comfortable with this? If not, say, this.
Say
and
okay, yeah.
And I'll shut it down. And it doesn't go as planned.
What is the safe word?
I honestly don't remember. It's not important.
Oh, it's a shame. I thought it would be something ludicrous that would then lead to them having to say that word in situations where it would lead to very stupid misunderstandings.
I don't remember it being like anything stupid, but not really a safe word so much as it was a signal, like,
Yeah.
And then they get all dragged into this, and Chizuru is feeling real sort of about the whole situation, and I don't blame her. And Kazuya feels awful for dragging her into this. And Chizuru is like, Kazuya, I just want to give you back this ring, and we can move past this and get on with our lives. And Kazuya is like, I want you to hang on to it for now. And she's like, okay, all right. And his intention is to finally get the words out to say to her, I don't want you to be a rental girlfriend anymore. And every time he goes to say it, he gets shut down in one way or another. And I'm just sitting here pulling my hair out like, Jesus Christ. And Mommy's over here putting on the nice girlfriend, saying, oh, I would never get between you and Chizuru or anyone you were, or it doesn't say Chizuru, because at this point, Chizuru is still putting up the front, like, no, we're still in a
Work
professional, like client and
yes.
like that. I can't think of the other word, but Mommy's not buying it. Okay, clearly.
Is right? I mean,
she is right.
She has the right hunch there. It's not like she's... But
she's trying to go about it in a way that's basically going to make everyone miserable and destroy their lives. And it's like, you need to tell Nagomi right now. And it's like, what if I told her that, oh, you're in some sort of distress and this and that? And Nagomi catches wind of this. And she's like, Chizuru, is there something wrong? You can tell me if there's a problem. And it's like, oh, no. And there's this one episode where Nagomi takes Kazuya out for a walk and they're talking, and she's like, well, I'm just so glad that you found someone you can be with. And she's respectful and she's kind and she's sweet. And Kazuya's sitting here like, oh no. And he feels understandably terrible for perpetuating this lie to his grandmother. Because, they couldn't get the truth out to Chizuru's grandmother before she passed, but at least she got to see the movie that Chizuru wanted to make, so she got, a good ending.
Is his grandmother in danger of dying?
I mean, she's old. I mean, she's old, and and I don't think the implication is there, but it's like, Kazuya wants to find someone to still it down with to make his grandmother happy, because that's all she wants is for her grandson to be happy.
I mean, he also needs to learn that you should live for yourself and not for other people. The funny thing is that, his wants and her wants kind of coincide. He just can't, verbalize it to the person that he should do it to.
Yeah, and because there's this big dramatic scene where I think the story was that Kazuya's mother and father got married at a church that is nearby to the resort. And she's sort of trying to get away from this so she can think for herself, and she runs off to the resort to the chapel for a little bit. And she's just there by herself. And Kazuya runs up to her with every intent of saying this thing to her. But Mommy is trying to lay down the law on Chizuru and say, well, if you don't say something to Nagomi by now, I'm going to do it. And when Kazuya goes to say something, she has to run away and intercept mommy, and it's a whole mess. And not that my anime list ratings mean anything, but this is the lowest rated season so far. It hasn't gone above a 7, but we're getting close to dipping below a 6 right now.
Okay, that is still higher as I would have expected, considering what you said about the show, how you described it and everything. But I guess people who, watch it, or at least some of them, have different expectations. I wonder, has the series at this point, I have sadly already forgotten, but has the series made it clear at this point that Chizuru feels the same way deep down as Kazuya, and they're just like, the only roadblock is that none of them can say it, or is it still kind of unclear or on her part, so that it could end up, if Kazuya verbalizes his feelings, that he could get shot down?
She clearly has feelings for him. Okay,
so it's the standard, just talk to each other, you dumb idiots!
It's at first, she's kind of unsure, but then as things go on, and as they're talking more, without him actually saying it, she's like, she says in so many words, if a guy told me that they wanted to be with me, I would give up the rental girlfriend business.
Mm-hmm. Hint, 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 hint.
Yes, mm-hmm. Yes, mm-hmm. Yes. And it's like, this is the worst I've ever seen of this kind of story.
That is, gotta say something, considering you have seen quite a lot rom-com anime, right? So.
But because we are at, I don't know where exactly it leaves off in the manga. The final episode of season 4 is called Paradise and Girlfriend. Paradise and Girlfriend is 20 to 30 chapters of the manga. It runs from chapter 188 to 230. Okay, it's 42 chapters. Excuse me, 43, because it goes to 231. The manga is currently at... Okay, how many chapters do you want to guess the manga is at before I reveal it to you?
After, as a whole, or?
As a whole to current.
So wait, where does the series end again? What chapter?
I'm going to be conservative and guess maybe 190, between 190 and 200, because literally 43 chapters have the same name, and the first chapter that has it is 188.
Okay, so 300?
405.
Jesus Christ. John, you're gonna have to stick with the series for a bit longer, I guess. How do they stretch this shit out so long? I don't understand. I do understand, sitcoms exist, right? And they run for, I don't know how many fucking seasons, even though the steam just is out after, the first 2 or something.
Even Seinfeld, a show about nothing of their own admission, has more going on than this.
Yeah, because it's always the same thing here, right? You have the 2 people who are obviously meant for each other, and then you have someone throwing a wrench into that, and it's probably not even as that you have many side characters that have their own thing going aside from our 2 mains. You don't have the How I Met Your Mother situation where you have 2 potential other pairings as well who have their own stories. This is not the case here, right?
Well, there's Ruka who wants so badly to be with Kazuya, but
it's still Kazuya. It's not like she's going after another guy, right?
But I glossed over a lot of details in this season because I have gone over the main thrust of it. But Ruka had gone on a rental date with one of Kazuya's friends, and he was invited on this vacation as well.
Okay.
And things are awkward between them, but not outwardly awful. Ruka, as crazy as she is for Kazuya, is not here to cause trouble. She is at least respectful of everyone. So I will give that to her.
One asshole girl is enough in the cast.
Right. And Kazuya's friend, whose name I can't remember, and it doesn't matter. He tries to speak with Ruka, and tries to at least smooth things over with her, and it's at least someone's trying to do something here. And then another one of Kazuya's friends is on this trip as well, and he's so oblivious to everything. And it's like, so you are worthless in the grand scheme of things. Why are you here? Why do you matter? You don't. Go!
To infuriate you further.
And then Kazuya's parents are there, and they are so ineffectual.
Oh my god, it's getting worse.
Like, Chizuru goes out one night with Kazuya's mother, and they have this talk about oh, this is where Kazuya's father and I got married, and the ring that you have used to belong to me. And it's at least a nice talk between them. And they go to the resort's gift shop, and Chizuru buys this like keepsake, like little ring thing for Kazuya's mother, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of nice at least. But it's so overshadowed by everything else, dude. I don't know if I can do this to myself. Season 5 is coming next year. I think I have to cut myself loose. Like, I was between hate watching this and Sword Art. It's like,
I mean, Sword Art hasn't been running for a while. So
there's been the 2 progressive movies, which I still haven't watched, and I want to at least sit down and watch them at some point and say that I have to be like, oh, okay, it's at least from a different perspective. Maybe Asuna's perspective of the story was at least slightly less stupid than Kirito's, but if it still gets to the same end point, then like. Also, I don't know when it happens in the manga. I think it's in one of the more recent chapters, so I don't think it'll happen in the anime for a minute. But I want to call out the author Reiji Miyajima. I want to call you out specifically, Miyajima. Why does Kazuya's appearance change to look suspiciously like you? Are you trying to say something about yourself with this story? What message are you trying to send? And apparently there's no transition. Kazuya just from one chapter to another changes appearance. And there are some people out there who are tripping over themselves to be like, oh, well, he went and, got his hair done or dyed or whatever. No. Is there the potential to write that in later? I mean, I guess, but it doesn't sound like the effort's been made. Miyajima, what? Why?
Also,
what are you
considering how you described Kazuya? Why would you want to make yourself the self-insert? Like, why would you want to admit to being that person in real life? Because Kazuya apparently is a flaming idiot. So I wouldn't be too keen on just letting everyone in the world know that that's me. That's just a self-insert character. Like, I mean, that suspicion is always there when you write a story and, there's a prominent male figure and you're a male writer. Of course, that could, always be there. The same for female writers with their female main characters. But, when you also make the appearance very close to your own, and then that person in your story is a fucking idiot. Like, what are you doing, man? Why would you admit that shit? Like, don't. I don't understand.
I don't get it.
But it's hilarious to me, let me be clear. Like, especially that he did it without any real explanation in the story, apparently. And it's like, no, that character's me now. I'm done pretending. I am Kazuya. Kazuya is me.
Like, going back to Sword Art for a minute, at least Kirito is honest about what he is. He's just Kawahara's power fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they let someone else write him for Ordinal Scale, he became an infinitely more interesting character.
Yeah, how about that? I think we both liked Ordinal Scale, right? I mean,
it was a good movie. It wasn't great, but it was good.
It was definitely serviceable. It wasn't annoying or infuriating.
So I really don't think I can do myself again with another season of this.
We will see. John, you've said this before.
I don't know. I don't even know when it's airing next season. I mean, next season there's going to be so much that I might have to just watch some of it in spring instead, because Jesus Christ, dude.
Is there? Okay, we'll see. I thought there wasn't much that I was interested in, but
there was a lot I wanted to look at least. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what else to say on this other than I got to the end of this, and apparently a lot of other people probably hated it just as much as I did. And I was so disappointed after season 3, dude, because it felt like it could get so much better, and it didn't. It got worse. It got so much worse.
I mean, if I had already watched 3 seasons of this, or 4 at this point, I probably would try to stick with it just so to see the asshole character get her comeuppance. But the problem is that's not an assurance at this point. Like, it's not assured that this will actually happen.
And the problem is there's still so much of the story to tell.
Story, quote unquote. But I get why you are frustrated with it, and I want to stick with that thought.
Did I ever mention that this was animated by TMS?
I don't think you have. And maybe at the very beginning when you talked about the first season or something, but...
Are y'all doing this to pay the bills? Because if so, I hope that's the reason you're doing it.
I mean, probably. It's still a successful series, right?
I wonder about that at this point.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't followed this at all, so I also didn't know that TMS did it, but if the manga is still going and the anime is still going... Something's working. I don't know for who and why and what, but something is, apparently.
Okay, yeah. Chapter... Jesus Christ. I just got hit with a massive truck. Chapter 405 released as of this recording 4 days ago on December 10th.
Wow. Okay.
It's that current. And apparently... God, I hate fandom. It's such a garbage series of websites. But at the bottom, they're showing chapters listed out to at least 410. So,
I mean, you could wait until the manga has wrapped up, whenever that will be, and then decide if you want to watch the rest of the show. Like, like getting soft spoiled if the ending.
That could be a decade out, brother.
Sure. Then you binge that shit. But
I hate binging.
I know, but then at least you could get like soft spoiled on, is it going into the direction I want, and if like the resonance is yes, then you at least know that that all that work, all that pain, all that suffering will at least lead to a good endpoint, which at this point you can't know. So I understand why you don't want to risk putting that much time into a show that might eventually like do the ultimate betrayal and let Kazuya and Mami end together by giving a redemption arc or some shit like that.
Jesus Christ, if they did that, I would personally fly to Japan, find Miyajima, and ask him, what are you doing? What is the message you're sending with this?
It sounded way too friendly. I expected you to do something else to him.
No, I don't want to... Miyajima-san, who hurt you? That is the core of what I'm trying to get at. Who hurt you so badly that you're writing this story, and it's such an awful, terrible story that you could just get to the point with, but you have to... Rent a Girlfriend is airing on Crunchyroll, and you can watch it there. The end, question mark?
"11-year-old orphan Anne Shirley has spent her life moving from one family to another, always hoping to find a place where she truly belongs. She's sent to live with elderly siblings Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert at Green Gables, a quiet farm in the town of Avonlea. It is quickly revealed that she is there by mistake. Having expected a boy able to help out with farm work, the Cuthberts are surprised to instead receive a young girl with a vivid imagination and a flair for the dramatic. Despite the Cuthberts' initial hesitation, Anne's energy, intelligence, and charm soon win them over. Anne settles into her new life, experiencing many things for the first time, such as attending school and making close friends, as she learns to navigate the joys and challenges of growing up. So yeah, Anne Shirley is based on a 1908 book series. This is probably the oldest adaption or with the oldest source material that we ever talked about. That book series is most well known by its first entry, Anne of Green Gables, written by Canadian author Lucy Maud Montgomery. The book series encompasses 6 books that focus on the character of Anne Shirley herself, and then there are a couple more that focus on her children and friends and others where she is referenced or appears in. And this new anime series adapts the first 3 books. So Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, and Anne of the Island, and counts 24 episodes. It is.
I don't think I ever knew it was a series of books.
Me neither. I thought it was one book, but there's a reason for that. Probably, maybe. I'll talk about it. It is produced by The Answer Studio, which I wasn't familiar with before, but which is a kind of prominent studio because it seems to have been founded in 2004 after the closure of Walt Disney Animation Japan by the vice president and general manager of that studio. And since then, they have worked on a lot of anime, among them Tower of God, Your Name, Flag, Anpanman, Armored Trooper Votoms, and a lot more. But also on several Western productions like Transformers Animated, a lot of DC home video movies like Batman Under the Red Hood, Son of Batman, Teen Titans Judas Contract, and a lot more. The series is directed by Hiroshi Kawamata, who seems to have directed a lot of younger kids-focused stuff like Shimajiro, Nepos Napos, Hell's Flute, etc. But he was also a key animator on Suzume, the Thundercats reboot, and a real blast from the past, Spaceship Sagittarius, whose existence I recently unearthed from my childhood memories and plan to rewatch when I find the time for it. Series composition and the script of 9 episodes of Anne Shirley was handled by Natsuko Takahashi, who also wrote scripts for Aikatsu, Aquarian, Bakugan, Yokai Watch, Butt Detective, Vandred, there's another blast from the past.
Oh my god.
Do you remember Vandred, John?
I sure do. Yes. I never watched it, but I remember it.
I watched it, John. It was one of my first anime that I downloaded from the interwebs. Because that didn't come out over here. Vandred was definitely one of the first that I watched fansub, so that was an interesting experience. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and many other things. Also handled the series composition on a lot of those as well. She is aided by Miharu Hirami and Rin, who both have worked with her on a couple other shows before this one as well, while also doing their own separate stuff. The music is composed by Michiru Oshima, who also did the soundtracks from Full Metal Alchemist, Little Witch Academia, Le Chevalier d'Eon, couple of episodes on Beck, Snow White with the Red Hair, which we reviewed, and many more.
Wow, that's a lineup.
Yeah. And all these talented people have very big shoes to fill. Why? Well, there was already an old adaptation of the first book in 1979. And that was handled by none other than Studio Ghibli member and Hayao Miyazaki co-conspirator Isao Takahata, who, of course, famously also directed Grave of the Fireflies, Only Yesterday, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, and many more. Back then he was still working at Nippon Animation, and his adaptation of Anne of Green Gables technically kickstarted Nippon Animation's world masterpiece theater line of TV series, which adapted a lot of works of classic literature into anime. There were a couple of other shows before Anne of Green Gables that can be counted into that adaptation franchise, quote-unquote, but those didn't run under the World Masterpiece Theater moniker yet, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, many of these shows aired on German TV when I was a wee lad, and I watched a bunch of them, just to name a few. Heidi of the Alps, that was also co-produced by our biggest public broadcasting network. And then, A Dog of Flanders, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Princess Sarah, Little Women 1 and 2, Pollyanna, Peter Pan, The Bush Baby, and I liked a lot of these shows. It was very much my jam back in the day, besides your standard action stuff. This and other anime that were not handled by Nippon Animation and that weren't necessarily always based on existing classic literature work, but at least were period pieces, like The Rose of Versailles, Robin Hood, Treasure Island, Lady Georgie. World Masterpiece Theater also later did an original story called Tico and Friends, which is about this girl that makes friends with an orca, which I also liked. For kids shows, the writing in these anime often felt more grown up and gripping in certain parts, very much focused on character development, which was not a given for cartoons at that time, so they very quickly caught my eye and I stuck to them. So yeah. Loved or at least liked all these shows. Didn't watch every episode of all of them, but because they were airing in, sometimes Saturday morning, sometimes in the afternoon or in the noon here. So sometimes I wasn't out of school when it was airing and so on. So, but I tried to catch what I could. But my biggest educational black spot when it comes to those particular kind of adaptive works has always been the first Anne of Green Gables series, because for some reason I never caught a single episode of it when it was on TV over here. So when this new adaptation was announced, I was pretty excited because finally I could experience this story in anime form. I guess this new adaptation isn't considered part of the World Masterpiece Theater franchise because it's not produced by Nippon Animation, and that last entry of that particular series was in 2009, which was actually the adaptation of the Anne of the Green Gables prequel. So I went about and checked out this new adaptation. And of course, I can't make any concrete comparisons to the old show because I haven't seen it. So I'll leave that to other people. And also, I haven't read the source material, so I can't talk about how well that is covered either. But I think I can evaluate whether this is a good series telling a good story in its own right. First of all, this is an incredibly pretty show. A lot of the environments and backdrops look like impressionist paintings. Like, it's crazy. Pretty much every walk through the woods is magical. The lighting, the color work, how pristine yet warm everything looks when it snows. It's a supremely gorgeous show. Like, I was mesmerized by it, like from the first episode on. Like from the backdrops alone look gorgeous, but also the character animation is amazing. And like I said, the color work and the lighting is what stood out most to me. Like there's so many pretty nature shots in this, and so many detail put into facial animations of characters and everything. Like it just looks amazing. Like they didn't have to put that much work into a show like that, I guess, because it's mostly hinging on dialogue and everything, but it's just, it feels like they wanted to put the work in, and they did. Like, it's just a very, very pretty to look at show. And yeah, so it's about this orphan girl named Anne Shirley, born in Nova Scotia in Canada, is taken in by the Cuthbert siblings and gets to live on their farm, estate, Green Gables, probably named after the Green Gables of the house they live in, on an island full of flowers and trees. The island is Prince Edward Island, a real Canadian island province. However, community/town Avonlea, where they reside in, is where a lot of the story is set in, is fictional. But as far as I've understood it, a lot of the stuff in Lucy Maud Montgomery Anne books is semi-autobiographical. So you can assume several of the locations and characters are based on existing places and people, just fictionalized with stuff added and stuff subtracted. It's still considered a fictional work, but with a lot of real-life personal influences. And yeah, Anne is waiting at the train station. The show starts off with her actually going to the train station with the woman that handles her adoption, and then she ends up on Prince Edward Island in Avonlea, and is collected by this old gentleman called Matthew Cuthbert, who is kind of flustered that he's greeted by a girl because he and his sister Marilla were looking to adopt a boy to help them out at the farm because they're, older and their, work on a farm is hard and they can't do it all on their own anymore. So they needed strong hands. And so they didn't expect to get a girl. And also, when I did the sneak peek, for some reason, I mean, the series doesn't make it clear that they are not, but I thought they were an old couple. I didn't know they were siblings, so I'm sorry for that. I just thought they were married couples, and I described them as such. So if people who read the books or watch the old series listen to that sneak peek, they probably were majorly annoyed. I'm sorry, my bad. But now I know. Okay, so they're siblings. I don't know if they're twins or anything, but they're siblings. And yeah, so Matthew immediately is like, oh, fuck. Oh, no, what am I going to do? Not in those words, but, he's immediately distraught because he also immediately takes a liking to Anne. She's very energetic, has a very vivid imagination that She's not necessarily retreating to whenever she's bored, but, then it flares up and she's even like, oh, what is that like? And what is that like? She talks a lot. She's a curious girl with big ideas that uses big words. Like a lot of people comment on that. She's like, for a lot of people say, like, for such a small girl, you use a lot of big words. And some of them also feel like condescended by her doing that, which is I feel is of the time. Like, that feels like a lot of people, like in more rural areas, like if a girl used a lot of, big and extravagant words, and we're like, does she think she's better than us or whatever? And, she gets some of these reactions. But, she's very, she's very energetic, like I said. Like, she immediately captures Matthew's sympathy, the way she talks, and how she's interested in everything on their cart ride back to the farm, to Green Gables from the train. And, like, she likes to give places and things new names. Like a normal pond she renames to the Lake of the Shining Waters, an avenue she renames to the Way of White Delight. The tree in front of her, in front of the window of the room she resides in, she calls the Snow Queen. So that's her thing. But she does that so she can, can remember the names better. Matthew is already taken with her, taken to her. He's like immediately like not bewitched, but he's like, oh my god, this girl is amazing and everything, and I would like to keep her. But the problem is his sister Marilla, who is like this very strict woman of few words, right? And she expected a boy, and once Matthew arrives on her doorstep with Anne, she's like, what is that? Where's the boy? Like, what? Why do you bring a girl home and we can't use her, right? And Anne is super distraught and super dramatic and is like, this is the worst day of my life and everything, which I guess, right? And she explains it, like, she's like, hey, I knew something was wrong. Like, this sounded too good to be true. Like, I'm getting brought to this amazing place. Everything is beautiful here. And I knew this was too good to be true. I knew something was wrong here, right? And she's just crying and everything, and you feel super sorry for her. And, Marilla's like, what good is she to us? But Matthew is like, hey, does that really matter? Maybe we can be, like, good for her if we keep her around. And that, kind of pulls at Marilla's, not necessarily at her heartstrings, because, she intends to bring Anne back to the orphanage the next day. And she does that, but then she runs into the woman that is supposed to adopt Anne in her stead. And that woman is an absolute dragon, like, even stricter than Marilla, and, like, feels already like a real asshole and, like, drill sergeant and something like that, which Marilla is not. She is strict, right? She is, expecting that, her orders are followed and is trying to keep Anne in line, but she's not completely cold or mean. And that is what that other woman seems to be, like, Miss Blewett or whatever she's called, or Blewett. And and immediately Mara is like, well, I haven't said that I decided to give her back yet. And that's kind of already that. And at that point, she decides to take Anne back with her to Green Gables and give her home there. And we start from there, or we go from there. And Anne is getting enlisted in school. She's making her a friend in the form of Diana, who becomes like her best friend throughout her entire life. Like they're bosom buddies or whatever they're gonna are called, and like really like the bestest of besties and everything. And so she's an important character throughout the story. And so this is pretty much, at least for its first third, a coming of age story of Anne experiencing childhood and taking in all these new experiences. And I would say this is the most interesting part of the story, just because it's done really well, which I think can be contributed to the, at least partially to the people who worked on the series, having worked on a lot of stuff that is more geared towards younger children, or a lot of it anyway. And, they get the perspective, I would say, of Anne and what the author was trying to convey with those experiences and everything. And they can really capture like the childlike wonder that Anne encounters every day. And like seeing something new in her environment, meeting new friends, going to school for the first time, meeting an interesting animal or whatever. Like she is like taking all that in with like these big bright eyes and this big smile. And she very much lives in the moment. Whatever made it seem like the world is ending one day is already forgotten after a good night's rest. On the flip side, a lovely day can suddenly throw her into the depths of despair on a whim. Like her reaction to the cusp expecting a boy is very theatrical, like I said. And there's so many moments in the show where she's like, oh, everything is wonderful, everything is great. And then one little thing happens and she just completely flies off the handle or is immediately like completely distraught and crying and everything. Like she's the original Junie. She also talks like that all the time, like so narrates her own life and everything. And, she really is like, likes to do stuff with big words. I kind of can relate to that. I guess I didn't talk that much as a kid, at least on my own, but when I did, I could also be somewhat theatrical, I guess. So that felt like near and dear to my heart, and I could relate to that character, and it was fun listening to her talk and everything. I mean, whether you'll enjoy the series or not is very dependent on how much you can tolerate over-enthusiastic, very theatrical little girls, at least for its first third. Like, that rarely stop talking. If that is not your speed and tone in terms of dialogue, you might get fed up with it. If you find it adorable and funny, you will definitely get your money's worth. My patience was tested at certain points, but I think overall Anne is a welcome ray of sunshine, even if she really is the original Junie Butte template in the way she talks and behaves and everything, dramatizes everything. Like everything, at least for the first third.
I mean, that's kids, though.
Yes, absolutely. But, she is, even for a kid, she's a special one in that regard. Like, she's really, really going there, like, in every aspect. So, it's fun. I enjoyed it. Like I said, she names things so she can get to know them better. When Marilla asks her why she named the tree outside her bedroom the Snow Queen, and asks Marilla if she'd be okay with being just named Woman all the time. Like, Anne has a very vivid imagination, but she's also good at explaining her worldview to matter-of-fact people like Marilla, broadening their perspective subsequently. So that's cool. Like, she's like, every person she meets, she like broadens their horizon by just her nature and the way she talks and the way she treats the world and everything. And I think the most obvious that is seen, or like you can realize, is like in the character of Marilla, who, like I said, is this very strict, kind of harsh, set in her ways woman, but who, after, like, let's say, a bit of a problematic start, is very much taking to Anne and, like, sees her as very much as a daughter after a while. After a short while, almost every ludicrous thing Anne says makes Marilla blurt out a concealed chuckle. And in certain situations, she matches Anne's theatrics with her own. Like, turns out those two are much more alike than any of them would have guessed. Well, except Matthew. He knew all along, that smug bastard. He ain't hiding it either. He's so happy about all the warmth Anne brings into their lives. He's a big smiling teddy bear. And I just love the dynamic between these three characters. Like, it's so much fun to see Marilla warm up and, Anne starting to be able to control herself a bit more in certain parts, but also just Matthew just being just overjoyed by all of this. Like, he's immediately like, oh man, this is great. This this is already doing so much for us, and I love having Anne around, and I'm so happy. Like, and you're happy with him because he's just like this awesome character, and you just want him to be happy. So, and Marilla too, after a while. Like, in the beginning, you think, oh no, she's like this old crone or whatever who's just is so matter of fact and doesn't know real happiness. But that's absolutely not true, and you see that very quickly once she and Anne starts to interact regularly, right? So, Matthew is a bit of a mediator between Anne and Marilla. Like, Marilla, not overly harsh, but definitely applies a strict hand to Anne's education and upbringing. And Matthew is willing to be more lenient and tries to see things more often from Anne's perspective. Like, he has to deal with two very stubborn women now, and he's surprisingly adept at handling both of them when it is necessary. So that's fun to witness. I'm not saying he's manipulating either of them, but he's like, hey, have you considered looking at it from this perspective, or what if you did this instead? And he's just good at that. So he's got the calm to mediate. Like, he's very like relaxed in that regard. So that's very nice. And Anne's parents died when she was very young, so she has nothing but her imagination to help her remember the short time she had with them. So that makes it very understandable why she's so fixated on imagination and what it does for her, right? Because it gave her somewhat of a home in her mind because she couldn't really remember her real home. And that makes it immediately understandable why she is so goddamn, why her imagination is so vivid and springs up at any given moment. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand and say stuff like, well, you're a weird one. And, but Marilla, after a while, comes to understand it and very much relates to that as well. And like I said, once she understands what Anne is all about, it's just so fun. Like, there's this, Marilla has this friend, I guess, neighbor. They definitely, like, if they're not in the beginning of the show, they become very close friends by the end, called Rachel. And Rachel is like this very nosy neighbor, like the busybody of the town, right? And she, like, when she meets Anne, she kind of makes fun of her hair, and that is a problem because Anne is very self-conscious about her looks, especially her red hair. Like,
oh, no.
She immediately flies off the handle when someone makes fun of it. She has quite a temper. Like, there's this moment when she enlists, when she starts school, where this boy, Gilbert, also a very important character, the local heartthrob in her school, calls her carrots to get her attention, as boys do at that age. And she turns around and breaks a writing board on his head.
Oh.
Which seems to only make him become more infatuated with her, actually. But, she has a temper. She, which, as it turns out, Marilla can have too. But Anne definitely has. And she has that towards Rachel as well when she comments on her hair and everything. So she's rude to her. And Rachel is, like, totally surprised that a kid would talk to her like that. And Marilla is like, you have to apologize. That just is not okay and everything. Sends Anne to her room and everything. But then she goes down the stairs, and you see in her, you get to take a peek into Marilla's mind, and she remembers the face of Rachel when Anne just yells at her and being like completely surprised. And Marilla just hunches over and starts to snicker because she thinks it was the most funny thing ever. And it's amazing. Like, you immediately say, oh no, she gets Anne. She totally gets her. And she actually finds it super funny the way Anne behaves. And she likes it. And then, she actually gets her to apologize. And Anne apologizing to Rachel couldn't be more fake and theatrical. And she really enjoys leaning into it, which again doesn't go unnoticed by Marilla because she sees Anne's version of a shit-eating grin that Rachel doesn't see. But but it works regardless. Like, Rachel takes the apology and is like, okay, girls do what girls can do. And they also become friends and everything. And Rachel is a very important character in the show. So that's nice. Like, it's like, oh, this is all meant to be. This works. And these people at some point get Anne. And she's supposed to be in this community. Of course, Deanna, her best friend, right? They're both into books and stories and everything. And they immediately gel with each other, become immediate besties. And that stays very much till the end of the show. And, it's just fun and it's heartwarming and it feels good and it's funny and it's just such an enjoyable show in its first third. But it's also not entirely sunshine and rainbows all the time. Anne is a very headstrong, sometimes mischievous kid, not necessarily intentionally, but she's definitely not above trying to make things go her way if possible. Add to that her theatrics, her propensity to drama and exaggeration, her very chatty nature, and her constant mood swings, and Marilla has her hands full. So it's not like you're always on the side of Anne. Sometimes you're also on the side of Marilla. It's like, oh, God, I'm sorry for that woman. She has work cut out for her. And this is her first experience being a parent, because both of them are not, neither Matthew nor her are married. Neither of them have kids. That's why they wanted to adopt the child in the first place, to help them out on the farm. And Marilla really could hardly have picked a more challenging candidate as her first child. Even when it comes down to it, Anne is a very good kid. She is really good. She's smart. She is fun. She has a good moral compass and everything most of the time. So they picked a good one, but still, it's a lot of work. And I'm glad that the series doesn't hide that. And it's like, oh, kids are, a lot of, the Shinzo Abe protocol of anime, doing.
God.
It's like, please get kids. Kids are so amazing. They're the best thing ever. And nothing bad happens when you have kids. And it's not a work at all. And you should just get kids because it's no trouble whatsoever. And this show is not like that, because Anna's a lot of trouble. She's a magnet for problems. But, the show also conveys that it's still worth it, that the Cuthberts adopted her because she enriches their lives so much in so many ways. And that's nice. And yeah, so as I said in the beginning, the show covers the first 3 books of the Anne series. So Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, and Anne of the Island in just 24 episodes. And it shows. The brisk pacing is not necessarily a bad thing, but I have seen people very much preferring the attention to detail and more contemplative mood of the old show. There's definitely an emotional moment at the midpoint of this adaptation, that I would have liked this adaptation to sit with a bit longer. Plus, they really should have skipped the upbeat OP for that episode, because that felt wholly inappropriate considering what happens right before and after it is played. You get the feeling the show very much is intent on covering all that material, and I understand why they did it, because the third book ends kind of a very good, kind of perfect note when it comes to Anne's character journey. It's not complete because there are 3 more books, technically, and maybe we get another season, but I kind of doubt it, because it felt kind of very the end, at least for this adaptation. But, these are... So, as comparison, the old series from 1979, which only covers the first book, had 50 episodes.
Oh, wow.
And this one does 3 books in 24.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, I am not saying that and I've read that too, that the old series definitely has some pacing problems in the other direction, where some of it feels very slow. But, that's not according to a forum post I read, the first episode of the new adaptation covers the first 4.5 episodes of the old adaptation. That's ridiculous. I haven't seen something like that before. And time progresses very quickly in the show. In the first episode, Anne is 11. And by episode 6, she is already 13. In episode 7, she turns 14. At the end of episode 6, she has to cut her hair very short due to reasons. In episode 7, it has already fully grown back. And I think in the old series, she has short hair for I don't know how many episodes. At least 10, I think, or something. And... I wonder how much this adaptation left out, because, like I said, the old one has had 50 episodes, and a lot of the episodes definitely are 2 separate stories squished into one episode, like Spy Family does it, for example. Then again, maybe this will get a second season, like I said, or these small self-contained stories are already in the book as well. But it definitely, at a lot of places, it felt like the series just rushed through the story. Apparently, it takes Marilla a lot longer to soften up in the old adaptation, which might make that development feel more rewarding there. I don't hate that it goes very quickly here from, oh, we don't need this girl, to God, she's the best thing ever in my life, and I'm so glad that we adopted her, right? Apparently, in the old adaptation, it takes a lot longer to get there, which, like I said, can feel more rewarding once that switch is actually flipped. And there's also... the story progresses after the first, I don't even know how many episodes, I guess 10 or something. And for a while goes to school outside of, I don't even know, I think in Redmond. But definitely not on the island. And then she teaches as a teacher back on in Avonlea for like another, like for the second, that's the second third. Her learning to become a teacher, then teaching for a while. And then the last third is her at college. And there's this tear-filled goodbye to her class at the end of the second third, where she decides to go back to college. Because there are reasons why she, went back to Avonlea. There's reasons why she went back to Green Gable in the second third, which I don't want to get into because spoilers. But at the end of the second third, she's like, okay, I want to go back to college and so on, and further my education and everything. And there's this tear-filled goodbye to her class that she taught for the past 2 years, apparently. The problem is that's barely one episode in this show. Like, that her teaching her class. Like, this is like, oh, I'm so glad I met all of you, and all her kids are crying and everything, and... we just saw one episode of her working actually as a teacher. She has some interaction with one of your pupils. That's like a continuous storyline in the second act, I would say, where she is like, she's trying to. That kid recently lost his mom and everything, and she's trying to get him back on his feet and everything, and that kind of intersects with the story of an old woman and that kid's father and everything. So she kind of still has stuff, doing stuff with one of her pupils, but, all these kids crying, like at the scene, in that particular scene, it's like, she has talked to maybe two of you once in one episode. Why are you so sad? I can of course assume, I get that this is in the original story probably, and if we would have gotten like a 50 episode adaptation of every of the books, probably 10 of those or 20 of those would have been her teaching her class. And that's just not in this adaptation. So you have to also have a very vivid imagination to sometimes get the emotional resonance out of the story when the story kind of asks you to have that, to feel for those characters when it's just rushing through a lot of the story beats. So that's a bit of a problem. I still liked it. I think it's still a well-told story, but it definitely has very brisk pacing at certain points because you can't cover 3 full books in 24 episodes. That's not possible. I'm not saying that the old show did it perfectly, but
Well, that's better than when JC staff tried to do a full volume of Data Live in one episode. So
yeah, sure. But, I can understand why people were like, oh my God, this is going too fast. Like, especially people who watched the old adaptation and liked it, right? And maybe read the books and were like, no, there's not, like, they leave too much out. Which I don't have, right? I neither watched the old adaptation. I didn't read the books. So I don't even have, like, the baggage of knowing what it could have been like. But even I, watching this show, noticed that at certain parts, it's just whoosh, like going by as a breeze so quickly. And there's some very, like, serious moments in the later parts of the show. Like, the first couple of episodes are very sweet and light. Yeah, usually the drama is very low stakes, like Anne being forbidden to see her best friend because she accidentally got her drunk. Or Anne accidentally dyeing her hair green instead of black. Like the epitome of lighthearted slice of life stuff. And of course, all of this is treated with the gravitas of the universe imploding by Anne. And the show knows that and winks at the audience several times, without belittling Anne's feelings, though, because they are, for the most part, genuine. But, you know, after that can't last forever because, like I said, after like the first 10 or 11 episodes, Anne kind of has grown up. Like she's going to study outside of the town and then she comes back, is already a teacher. Like, I think she is technically fully grown up in terms of character behavior and everything by episode 16. And there she's going to college. And even before that, like she's like leaving her childhood behind in like episode 9 or 10 or whatever by moving out of the town for a while. And, you know, this is a coming of age story, of course, not only for like her childhood part, which is the old adaption, I guess. But, you know, Anne growing up, learning from her many mistakes, becoming a woman, Marilla learning to become a surrogate mom. It's all very heartfelt and sweet. The ultimate comfort food. But once Anne starts to become an adult, you know, focusing more on her studies, trying to find out what she wants to do and who she wants to become, the show occasionally dips into more of a melancholic tone and serious tones. And definitely there's some topics tackling loss and problematic stuff in relationships and everything. You know, especially in later parts when then things become much more serious, like starting with the second act, but definitely also in the third. There's still funny moments in there, obviously, a lot of them, even entire episodes and everything. But there are also much more serious stuff in there. There's this moment after Marilla notices how tall Anne has become and that she will leave the house soon to study in a different town, where she asks her why she isn't as chatty and is not using as many big words anymore. And Anne replies, I don't know. I don't want to talk as much. It's almost a pity, isn't it, now that I'm nearly growing big enough to say any big words if I did want to. It's fun to be grown up in some ways, but there's so much to learn and do and think that there isn't time for big words. Which is a very succinct way of describing reality pushing aside imagination when you become an adult. Mm-hmm. And that is also kind of what is happening to the show. Because in the first act, you are like mostly focusing on this childlike wonder, like a child discovering this world that is entirely new to her. Having so many new experiences, making friends, like growing attached to her new parents and everything, and the town she's living in and so on. And like everything is fueled by her imagination. Everything is hyper colorful. Everything is like in need of big words and everything. Everything is super dramatic. And that kind of goes away with the second act naturally because it has to, because she's becoming an adult. But with that also, a bit of the fun leaves the show. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but, you know, if you think like the entire show is going to be like the first act and it's just going to be, you know, fun shenanigans with Anne, that kind of doesn't happen at some point in the movie. And also her character changes because it has to. Like the show shifts gears at the midpoint by, for example, by introducing like these twins, Davy and Dora, who Marilla also dubs because they're of a relative that died. And that is putting Anne into a big sister / mother role. And Davy is a little shit. I didn't catch much for this shift, really. Like, it's not super big. Like, it's only a couple of episodes because the series, like I said, rushes through all of its story beats very quickly. But like I said, the series naturally loses a lot of its spirit once Anne has grown up. That is not the fault of the series. It's just the nature of the story and the source material. But once your character grows up, they have to deal with grown-up problems and less with outlandish kid stuff, which is by nature more fun, especially if the kid in question is one with such a vivid imagination as Anne. I think in that particular part of the story, the problem is instead of really leaning into the grown-up stuff and making everything feel more complex and serious, it tries to have its cake and eat it too. You know, there's Anne fulfilling more adult roles like being a teacher and surrogate big sister and the troubles that come with that, but it also tries to keep the youthful spirit around by introducing the twins and have Davy be a little scoundrel. Problem is, it can't recapture the magic of Kid Anne's story. Like, Davy is annoying and Dora is a timid nothing character, so instead of the story properly evolving and staying focused solely on Anne and her adult troubles, it's trying to flip back and forth between the more lighthearted and more serious stuff, and it doesn't necessarily always work. But like I said, due to the quick pace of the show, it's also only about 5 episodes of the whole series that deal with that part of Anne's life. So it's not as problematic, but it's something that stood out to me. I feel like by the time it reaches the third act, the series strikes a pretty good balance in its last third between the more lighthearted stuff like the romance and that becomes more of a focus point there, and serious moments like character deaths, romantic turmoil, and so on. And that is mainly because it feels like it's focusing more on Anne herself again. And I feel like in the middle point, I didn't get that as much, or like it didn't feel as, I don't know. It felt like a transitional period, which makes sense because that's also kind of what that is in Anne's life. Like, that's not where she's gonna end up eventually, and that's also not where she started. But it also feels like that in the show, and I'm like, I don't like that as much as the first part. And then when I get to the third part, I was like, oh, I like this much more than the second part. So you have like this gap in between where it's like, oh, okay, you have to get through this to get from the good part again to the good part of the story, I guess. But all of this are nitpickings because I like this series overall. It's still plenty fun there, and there are enough colorful shenanigans to go around. But in my opinion, the first act is still the best with Kid Anne. And from what I've understood, the original series is mostly just that. So I might eventually just go back and check that out. I just liked Anne getting acquainted with the life in Green Gables, making friends, and her dynamic with Marilla and Matthew so much. So once a lot of that is not the focus anymore, the series lost me a bit. But I still liked it. And like I said, it got me back in the third act again. And there was still a lot of funny, sad, and heartwarming moments in the last 2/3. So it was definitely worth watching it from beginning to end. In the last part, we have, like I said, a focus on romance. Like, you can guess who is the main, like, romantic interest as soon as he enters the stage in this. So it's more classic, saccharine one, very predictable. But what I like was that the series develops it very slowly and carefully, and it doesn't really become the focus until the last couple of episodes. So it's not overbearing, like a constant will they, won't they, whatever. It's more on the sidelines of the story, and then in the final couple of episodes, it becomes more the focus, but also doesn't take too much time there, because I was afraid, hey, if the series is rushing through the story so quickly and eventually it's going to put the focus on the romance, like, that's going to waste a lot of time on stuff that I don't want it to be wasted on. But it felt definitely more organic and natural than I expected it to. So it was nice. And it kind of bookends the story very well, you know, how that romance develops and everything. And also, it makes sense that it takes a long time to get to that point. So I feel like even despite its short runtime and its rushing through the story, the romance itself didn't feel rushed. It felt like it got the appropriate amount of time, considering how much time was given to the other story beats, or how little time was given to the other story beats in this adaptation. So that was nice. That was good. I didn't mind it. I thought it was well done, even though, like I said, it's a very classic, very by the books romance, very, saccharine in a way, but it has its ups and downs, so it's not completely straightforward and everything. So there's a bit of drama there as well, definitely. So yeah, I liked that as well. What I also really liked, while I'm steering towards the end of the review here, either the subs directly take text from the book, or they adjust the translation to match the tone by using less contemporary language. It feels very much of the time. I think I read that they took a lot of the text for the subs directly from the books, which is great. It definitely sounds like the people would maybe talk back in the day. So it feels like they definitely paid attention to that and put the work in to make that sound. It doesn't always, like, there's some things in there where I feel like, oh, maybe they didn't take that from the book, and it feels like that would be something that would be said at that time. So maybe they had to improvise there because they didn't have source material to go from, because they had to adjust the script. But while the Japanese, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with my knowledge of the Japanese language, with which is very limited. I feel like the Japanese language is not trying to do, the Japanese dub is not really trying to do that. It's just using contemporary, normal today Japanese language. But the English subs definitely go the extra mile. And it definitely sounds like you would read a book from that time in the way the characters talk and the phrases they use and the idioms they use and so on. So that was cool. It was nice. You don't get to read anime subs that have this kind of prose usually. So I like that. I thought that was a very welcome variation from the usual sub style you get. What I also liked is the OP, because it's so well animated and the song is a real great jam. And just dancing past the entire cast and then ending on her grown-up version. Very sweet. Really liked it. Also liked the ED. Was very pretty. But yeah, I definitely liked this adaptation. I thought it was great. It definitely had some problems, quote unquote, in that it is just going by so quickly and just covering so much source material. Just, I can't even imagine how I would have looked at the series if I was familiar with the old show or the source material have I read. I would probably hated it because I was like, this is leaving out too much. What the hell? This is crazy. But since I didn't have that, I was like, oh, this is a really well told, nice coming of age story. And it's a period piece, which I really like. And it's an underused setting and everything. So I don't know how many anime take place in Canada, so that's nice. Yeah, I thought that was great. The ending is nice and warm and heartfelt, pretty much like the rest of the show. And I love the characters. Pretty much all of them were a blast and enjoyable, and except for Davy. But also, he gets also better. So there's that. But yeah, I think this is a more satisfying full circle ending in terms of setups and payoffs than the old show probably had. I looked up when the old show ends, and that happens like I said, at the end of the first act in this show, like after, I don't know, 8 episodes, 9, something like that, 10. And I feel like if they ended it there and we wouldn't get a second season, I would have felt like, okay, this is an okay ending, but it leaves a lot of, threads dangling. So I'm glad that this show covers more of the source material, albeit in very abbreviated form, apparently. But like I said, the way it ends up, where it ends up, it feels very good. It feels very satisfying. And, I'm always happy when an anime gets a satisfying ending. So that does a lot for me. So I'm glad that this happened here. Would have it profited from being 2 or 3 times the length? 124 core for each book? Probably. But what we got is a nice adaptation of a classic coming-of-age story regardless, with lots of engaging characters, fun, tears, joy, aplenty, and at times breathtakingly beautiful to look at. If you haven't seen the old show, I'd say check it out. And even if you have, you might want to check this out because it's a quick watch and covers more than the old one did. I'm glad I finally filled in that black spot in my library of unwatched anime classics, and it definitely has lent wings to my imagination. And that is a wrap on the 174th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our podcast is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Find us where all the podcasts live, but also check out animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Please leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice if you can. Follow us on the socials or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
A burning rivalry to become the greatest samurai of all
turns into a crazy cross-country adventure.